Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and I recently reviewed the green Tyrannosaurus Rex from Mojo Fun and told you guys how they had sent a few different variations of figures that we had already reviewed. Well, here we are with the Mandschurosaurus, as they actually have an alternate version of that. And this figure is actually the same color scheme as the initial prototype images that were shown. When I reviewed the Mandschurosaurus initially, I was under the assumption that they had actually changed the paint scheme to that very cool design that they had on the other version. Well, that is actually not the case. They didn't change that. That was just another version of this figure and happened to get released before the actual prototype version did. So we now have this version, which does look really cool as well, and may actually please fans of Mojo Fun a little more so than anybody that might have been a little off-put by the color scheme on the previous version, because this one has a very naturalistic coloration on it, I think, and really beautiful tones of color used throughout. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So just like with the Tyrannosaurus Rex, we've actually already reviewed the sculpt of this. If you would like to see a much more detailed review of the sculpt of this Mandschurosaurus, down in the description I will include a link to the initial review of this figure with the alternate paint scheme, so make sure you check the description if you want to see a more thorough review of the figure overall. So basically what we're here to look at is what is different on this one in comparison to the previous version for 2020. So up here on the head, you can definitely see that the head has a beautiful appearance as far as the very nice browns they've used, and it actually gets to a darker brown that runs up here on the top of the head. So there's some really beautiful color variation as far as the browns used, because you've got this really nice semi-dark brown, and then it gets up here to the top of the head to almost like a burnt umber or a black up there on the top, and then it transitions to a lighter brown here in the neck. But then as we lead back into the neck, you can also kind of see like variations of like a yellowish brown included as well. So there is quite a bit of variation in color, and you can see certain areas have been highlighted with this brown that's similar to what you see on the face, like right here in the shoulder blades and in general in the musculature of the dinosaur, and it helps to give it a really cool look, as well as kind of like a striping effect that runs through certain areas of this Mandschurosaurus. The eye is actually painted quite nicely as well. It has kind of like a dark brown border that runs around the eye, and then the eye itself is an orangish color with a black pupil, and it's very nicely glossed. You can see over on this side it's also beautifully painted and very nicely glossed. There's no sloppiness that appears anywhere to the paint of this figure. Just like most of the Mojo Fun 2020 line, it's all been really nicely painted. You can also see that it kind of lightens up the brown around the eye here as well. It kind of borders around the eye socket. It's a little bit of a lighter brown, really kind of drawing your attention to the eye area of the figure. The area around the eye is also kind of like a light brown that kind of borders around the eye socket, so that helps to really draw your attention to the eye area, and again give it just a little bit more color variation. The inside of the mouth and the beak appears to be pretty much the same as what we saw in the previous version, as far as like this blackish color for the beak, and then the inside of the mouth having kind of like a pinkish reddish type of a color. Pretty realistic appearance, I will say, and the beak actually has kind of a gloss coat to it, which helps it shine and also look quite nice and quite realistic, because most beaks that you see do have kind of a shine to it, and you do see that here on this Mandschurosaurus. And the area that I feel like is probably my favorite part of this figure, and when I was actually going over the figures in my initial Mojo Fun 2020 video when we had only seen the prototype images, I stated how much I really loved this reddish area of the throat, the kind of hanging skin that is like that really nice reddish coloration, and that follows through here in person. I really love that area of the figure. I think that it was a really nice touch. You can also see that the ridges that run up here on the spinal column are painted with a reddish coloration, and they do run out the entire length of the tail, almost all the way to the tip. And then the upper part of the dinosaur sports a really nice dark brown that runs along the border of the entire spinal column. But otherwise the body is pretty much the same kind of light yellowish brown, with this kind of darker brown creeping in certain areas and shading certain areas, giving it a really cool appearance overall. And you can see it kind of does the same kind of borders right here for the underside, but you can also see kind of like this light white here that creeps in certain areas, even into the stomach, which looks really cool. And the underside to the stomach also sports that really beautiful white coloration all over the place. Really nicely done, I think, as far as the paint apps go. And then the limbs kind of transition from the brown to like this whitish coloration similar to what you see on the underside of the body, but then transition to a nice dark brown on the hands and the feet. and it looks really cool. Again, you can even see some of the white kind of creeping through the brown here on the feet. I'll get a closer look so you can see it a little better. So it helps to give it quite a bit of color variation, honestly, all over the body, and I think it was a really cool touch. The opposing side also looks pretty much the same as far as the way it's been painted. Very consistent and really beautifully done on both sides of the figure. And Mojo Fun did a great job as far as matching this up to the promotional images, which again is very important, I think, especially when they've had a few doubters due to those figures a few years ago, as they ended up a little bit different when it came to the tones of color used. In certain areas were just kind of missing like stripes and stuff. So Mojo has been doing a really good job as far as making sure their figures turn out like the prototypes, and that follows through once again with this absolutely magnificent Mandschurosaurus. As far as a size goes, from the head to the tail, you are looking at about 10 inches pretty much on the dot, or about 25.5 centimeters. And for a height, about 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters. And then to the top of the head, about 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters. Here is the original Mandschurosaurus that I reviewed with the new version, and you can see that they are definitely the same sculpt, definitely the same size, all that fun stuff. But you can also see how cool they look next to each other. I think it really creates a really beautiful looking mating pair. Maybe this one here in the front would be the male due to the reddish coloration in the throat and the red that runs along the ridges of the spinal column. And then this one here in the rear would maybe be the female, because for the most part a lot of the tones of color on it are really darker tones. It's not quite as light as you see on the one here in the front, the newer version that I've just reviewed. So it's really cool that Mojo Fun has chosen to release two versions of this figure, again giving you kind of a mating pair. Really, really awesome touch on their part. Again, just like I stated before, if you would like to see a more detailed review of the sculpt and all the fine details and everything of the Mandschurosaurus, make sure you check down in the description and you check out the initial review that I did on the original version. So as far as this 2020 Mandschurosaurus from Mojo Fun version 2 goes, I really, really like it, and I actually think I like this version better than the original version, which I really did like that version a lot when I had first seen it. But this version, I don't know, something about the paint scheme looks really, really cool. Again, using light tones of color, has a bit of a flashy appearance to it overall, but I really feel like all the tones of color for the most part look very natural on the figure, and the uses of the red on it help to give it kind of a vibrant appearance and a pretty flashy look overall. I really think that was a great use of the red there in the throat. It looks very natural, kind of looks like it belongs, and I think that all the browns and everything used all over the figure also look great. Of course, the sculpt, as I mentioned in the previous review, is just fantastic. And the fact that Mojo Fun, like I said, has given us two versions of this figure is just the coolest thing. I love that. I love having repainted versions of figures that I already have. It's just kind of something that I'm a big fan of, having different versions to add to the herd, and that's exactly what you get here with the Mandschurosaurus. So, when this or the other version are in stock on DeJenkins.com or EverythingDinosaur.com, make sure you order either or both, or you can actually, I do believe you can order them both right now on MiniZoo, as that website I do believe has them in stock. I know it at least has one of the two, not positive if it has both, but it just may have both at this point. So either way, make sure you pick up both or one of these very cool Mandschurosaurus figures from Mojo Fun for their 2020 line. But also don't forget to please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.